you ever stopped to wonder what would have happened if Kyojuro Rengoku, the unforgettable Flame Hashira, had been reborn with all his memories intact? Would he have been able to avoid that tragic fate on the Mugan Train? And more importantly, could he have saved not just himself, but all his friends who died throughout the story? What's up, guys? It's Shoyo. And if you're into this kind of story and want to find out if fate can actually be changed, go ahead and hit that like button and let's get into it. So, before we answer any of that, we gotta start from the beginning. The moment Kyojuro opens his eyes again, he'd see he's not bleeding out on a train anymore. He's back at his old house, in his childhood body. Confused, his strategist brain would immediately think it's some kind of trick, maybe a cruel blood demon art. But then it clicks, and when it does, little Rengoku, who always kept that stoic composure, just breaks down crying. Pure happiness. Because his mother, Ruka, would be alive and breathing on the other side of the door. He'd just stand there for minutes, just listening to her voice, too overwhelmed to move. But remember this moment, because this second chance is gonna come with a price later on. He'd swear to change everything that went wrong. But he quickly realized some things are just really hard to change. His mother's illness was physical, inevitable. No matter how strong Rengoku was, there was no magic cure. And this is where the first problem kicks in. It seems small, but it changes the entire board. Knowing that, he'd make sure to spend every possible second by her side, taking in her wisdom, making sure she passed knowing her sons were gonna be okay. But there was something he could change, his dad. Knowing that Shinjiro would fall apart, young Kyojuro would use his adult maturity to stop that from happening again. He'd show such fierce determination, such early mastery of flame breathing, that instead of giving up, Shinjiro would find a new purpose, training that prodigy. And remember this, the Shinjiro who never broke is gonna come back in the most insane way. One important thing, Rengoku was reborn with his memories, but his body is still a kid's. Strength and conditioning would take time. So he'd train day and night, starting at age 5. Total concentration, breathing constantly, way before any kid his age. He'd master the flame-breathing forms around 7 or 8 years old, the youngest swordsman in history to reach that level. But the real test isn't getting strong early. It's whether that actually changes the night everything went sideways. Before we get into the arcs, it's worth understanding what Rengoku would be doing behind the scenes. Because it's not just his own story that changes, it's the whole world around him. Sanemi Shinazugawa Rengoku would approach him years earlier, stop the bitterness from completely isolating him. With someone who genuinely respects him, Sanemi becomes less aggressive, more present for his brother Genya. Kane Kocho. Knowing the exact date of her encounter with Doma, Rengoku shows up in time. With 2 Hashiras, Upper Moon 2 is forced to retreat. Kane survives. And with her alive, Shinobu isn't consumed by revenge. She becomes colder, more calculated, more dangerous. This is the hidden card. More people alive now means more firepower when Muzan stops playing around. Muichiro Tokito. Rengoku finds him early, before the trauma wipes his memory. With early training and someone who actually cares, Muichiro awakens his mark ahead of schedule, without having to go to the entertainment district alone. Tengen never suffers the injuries that forced him to retire. One more Hashira kept active for the final showdown. Obunaiguro. This one's the hardest. Closed off, distrustful. Carrying a weight that not even Rengoku could lift. The only thing that ever calmed him down, even if he'd never admit it, was being around Mitsuri. Rengoku notices that, files it away in the back of his mind, not knowing yet that it'll matter at the heaviest moment of the entire war. Every one of these changes feels like a win, and they are. But the more Hashiras survive, the better their chances against Muzan at the end. But it's gonna cost them something. Hey, real quick, if you made it this far, you're obviously a huge Demon Slayer fan. So let me ask you something. Have you ever tried drawing Rengoku, Tanjiro, or any of your favorite characters, and it just came out completely wrong? Like, you know something's off, but you have no clue how to fix it. Yeah, same. That was me too. Until I found Anime Art Academy. And what they do is actually crazy. You don't just sit there watching lessons. You submit your own drawings and get personal feedback from real Japanese manga artists. They literally draw over your work and show you exactly what needs to change. No guessing, no wondering if you're improving, you just know. Links in the description, and they've got a free trial, so there's literally nothing to lose. All right, back to Rengoku. Knowing the exact date of Muzan's attack on the Kamado family, Rengoku puts together a plan. He requests patrols in that area days in advance. Shows up at the Kamado house with a strategic lie about demon bears to convince Tanjiro to let him stand guard. Tanjiro, with his connection to the transparent world, sees the truth in Rengoku's soul and agrees. But here's where it gets dangerous. When you save this moment, you speed up the war, and that's gonna hit hard later. Then the Demon King arrives, expecting an easy massacre. Instead, he finds the 9th form, Flame Tiger, waiting right at the front door. Rengoku, tapping into his future memories, unlocks his mark right then and there. He clearly can't kill Muzan, but he catches him completely off guard. By some miracle, he holds him until the first rays of sunlight hit the horizon. Muzan retreats, feeling humiliated. But the moment he disappears, Rengoku drops to his knees, coughing up blood. Force awakening the mark takes a brutal physical toll, weeks in bed, near fatal fever, almost dying from the strain of pushing past human limits before his time. And that weakness is gonna show up again at the worst possible moment. The result? The Kamado family survives. All of them. Nezuko doesn't become a demon. Tanjiro doesn't carry the weight of the world, but instead Inspired by the sight of that fire god, Tanjiro begs to be trained by Rengoku. And hold on to this. Tanjiro trained differently from the very start, changes everything on the Mugan Train. Years pass. Rengoku personally trains Tanjiro. The kid blazes through the final selection. The hand demon is taken out effortlessly, letting the souls of Sabito and Makomo finally rest in peace. With Kane alive, Shinobu isn't driven by revenge. The flower pillar stays active, making the core dramatically stronger. On the Mugen Train, the situation looks completely different. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke on board aren't rookies anymore. They're Tsuguko, trained by the elite. Rengoku, knowing exactly what Enmu is planning, never falls asleep. He finds the demon's real neck, decapitates him before he can merge with the train. What was a life or death battle in the original? Here, it's a 5-minute mission, not a single passenger hurt. Except the train was never really about Enmu. It was about who came after. Akaza lands with that thunderous impact, expecting the same man as before. Fatal mistake. Rengoku, with his mark active and knowledge of every one of his opponent's techniques, smiles. The fight isn't balanced. It's completely one-sided. Rengoku dodges the compass needle strikes with pinpoint precision. Akaza, confused, tries to pull back. Rengoku doesn't let him. And the secret here isn't just strength. Rengoku taught Tanjiro to access the transparent world and erase his battle spirit. Akaza's compass becomes useless. The demon is fighting blind against two masters his senses can't even detect. Before dawn, Akaza's head rolls across the ground. Seems perfect, right? Except killing an upper moon this early puts Muzan on high alert. And a scared Muzan doesn't back down. He speeds everything up. Defeating Akaza was a matter of strength. What comes next is a matter of endurance. And those are completely different things. You'll get it soon. In the entertainment district, Rengoku tags along with Tengen. With two elite Hashiras and a stronger trio, Gyutaro and Daki don't stand a chance. Tengen doesn't lose a hand or an eye. He doesn't have to retire. Meanwhile, Tanjiro keeps training in parallel, sharpening every form of sun breathing between missions. Every win in the field, every conversation with Rengoku gets him closer to what he needs to be for the final fight. And notice the pattern forming here. The faster you clear the moons, the bigger the problem with Muzan later. In the Swordsmith village, Muichiro awakens his mark without needing to almost die first. Rengoku and Mitsuri, master and student, form a flame and love duo that protects every swordsmith and every blade. Gyoko and Hentengu are taken out with no major losses. During this time, Tanjiro is in the mountains, with Urokodaki revisiting the origins of sun breathing. Every detail Rengoku shared taking on new meaning. What looked like just extra training was actually setting up the final strike against Muzan. At Hashira training, with every pillar alive and none retired, the level is completely different. Not just physical conditioning, it's a full knowledge transfer. Rengoku brings everyone together. Shares what he knows about the transparent world, the crimson red blade, the weaknesses of each remaining upper moon, things they only figured out mid-fight in the original. Here it becomes planned strategy. Tanjiro, by Rengoku's side, throughout all of training, finally masters the 13th form of sun breathing. Rengoku looks at the kid he's trained since childhood and knows he's ready. After all of that, the night of the final showdown finally arrives. Muzan falls into the Ubiyashiki mansion trap. Everyone falls into the Infinity Castle. But now with a numbers advantage, with knowledge, with a plan. Shinobu doesn't have to sacrifice herself to poison Doma. With Kanae, Kanao, and Inosuke fighting together, Upper Moon 2 gets taken down through sheer force and combined strategy. Doma dies, never understanding human emotions. Defeated by the sisters he underestimated. The fight against Kokushibo brings together Sanemi, Gyome, Muichiro, Genya, and Rengoku. 5 marked hunters, red blades, attacking in sync. Muichiro doesn't get cut in half like in the original. What a brutal ending that was, but not here. Genya doesn't die. Kokushibo sees the shadow of Yoriichi in Rengoku and Tanjiro, accepts defeat, crumbles. And here's something nobody thought about. Clearing the castle too fast means one thing. They'll have to hold Muzan off for way longer until sunrise. The battle against Muzan is a nightmare of endurance. The Hashiras move in waves. Kanae and Sanemi on the flanks in perfect sync. Tengen and Rengoku creating openings with explosive techniques. Obanai and Mitsuri covering the blind spots. Muzan is facing every Hashira from the strongest generation, all marked, all with red blades, all knowing his next move, but Muzan still pushes back and tags some of them. Sanemi takes a brutal hit to the gut, but keeps fighting. Giyu loses consciousness for a moment, gets saved by Rengoku, and nobody dies. They protect each other with an intensity Muzan has never seen. But then, something happens that Rengoku didn't expect to see in this timeline. Fate collects its debt. Muzan, cornered and furious, spots a gap, a millisecond in Mitsuri's defense. He launches an attack too fast to intercept. But someone sees it coming. Obanai Iguro, the same closed-off, distrustful man that Rengoku had noticed years ago. The one who only ever calmed down around Mitsuri. He doesn't think. Pure instinct. He throws himself in front of the attack. Takes the full impact of Muzan's whips directly to the chest to protect her, and falls into her arms. Blood soaks through her clothes, and with his last breath, Obanai uses it not to fight, but to finally tell her what he never said while he was alive. And I think you guys already know what he said. Obanai's death hits every Hashira like a truck. Even with the future changed, death was still there, still a real possibility. The rage Rengoku feels watching his former student cry out in pain over losing Obanai becomes the final trigger. And then, in the middle of the chaos, someone else steps onto the battlefield. Shinjiro Rengoku, not the broken man from the original timeline, but the flame Hashira who never fell apart. Father and son draw their blades with heavy hearts, and for the first time ever, flame breathing happens in perfect sync between two users. They charge together, avenging their fallen comrade, cutting off every escape route for Muzan. The sun starts to rise, and Tanjiro leaps in for the final attack. Rengoku carves the path open with the 9th form, and with a blazing red blade and the 13th form of sun breathing, Tanjiro finally cuts through Muzan. But the Demon King tries to regenerate, to run. He tries to transform into a giant flesh baby, but it's useless. Rengoku and the other Hashiras leave 0 openings, blocking every exit. The sun floods the battlefield, and Muzan Kibutsuji finally turns to ash, gone forever. The final scene is everyone beaten up, exhausted, crying. Not just from relief, from grief, Mitsuri hugs Obanai's Haori, promising to live for him. Rengoku hugs Tanjiro with pride, telling him he kept his promise. But with a sad look in his eyes, knowing that a perfect victory just doesn't exist. The Demon Slayer Corps is dissolved not because of defeat, but because it's finally no longer needed. Sanemi and Genya make peace. Rengoku goes home at peace, not just carrying memories, but the certainty that he changed fate, that he saved lives, that he built a future where nobody has to fight the way he once fought. And with that, Kyojuro Rengoku doesn't just save the world, he creates a new one. If you like this story, drop Rengoku GOAT in the comments. And now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments what you want the next video to be about. I read everything. If you enjoyed it, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And remember, I'm Shoyo. Catch you next time.